Hello, this is episode 330. Well, sorry, start again. Hello, my name is Vicki and welcome to A Wealthy Life podcast. This is episode 33. I can't believe I've already got to 33 recordings. And I love the number 3 and 333 and 333, and therefore 33 is a great one for me in terms of the numbers. Now, it's not going to involve spreadsheets, so don't panic, but you really need to listen to this episode. There is a lot of scaremongering, doom and gloom, disaster on the horizon being reported in the media. And while some of it is based in solid, if you like, economic evidence and potentially even economic predictions, the thing about a prediction is it can be wrong. Things can happen out of the blue to change the course of history, of your life, of economics, of finances dramatically. And so I really want you to listen to this. It will talk a lot about property because obviously that's my world and that's what I can see and what I can relate to. But this is going to be really important for you, whether you invest in property or whether you are simply just somebody who is interested in having a wealthy life and doesn't want property and a property portfolio to be part of that. So let's start off with talk about interest rates at the moment. So interest rates are really interesting. They are a mechanism, I think they would call it a fiscal mechanism to control inflation, because basically if we make the cost of borrowing money more expensive, the theory is that we slow down people's spending, and if we slow down people's spending, then we have to adjust how much supply that we create. If we don't create the supply, then we don't have the supply to fill the demand, and it's just all a big circle. The bottom line you have to understand here is that in the UK, the Bank of England controls our interest rates. It'll be someone like the Federal Reserve in America. There will be a body in every country that controls the interest rates of that country. And they have been steadily climbing through 2022. I would say probably mostly in response to the war between Russia and Ukraine and the uncertainty that goes on there, but also quite probably because the business world and personal worlds and shopping and life has been returning to normal post-COVID. And so we would have seen at the latter half of 2021 and certainly the front half of 2022, people returning to a new version of a normal life, getting back on with things, buying things, feeling more confident as the last tranche of fear disappeared into the background. And that level of confidence spurs everything on, and then we start to get prices climb, and that would be normal. But of course, what we had on top of that is prices climbing because of the consequences of the war. And I don't know about you, but I didn't really know a lot about the Ukraine. They popped up on the radar in the past because there was some kerfuffles there. Now it's become evident that they are the supplier of a vast amount of raw materials. We were doing a build on this house here. We needed a steel beam. Steel prices were literally going up daily because the steel plants that are in the Ukraine that supply a lot of the world's steel were now being affected by the war with Russia. And so there became this shortage of the supply of the raw materials, the steel, and therefore the prices of the end products that are made with steel started to increase in price. And that's the start of inflation going on. We've then also learned that a lot of grain is grown in Ukraine. That has a massive effect, not only on world starvation and feeding the population of the planet, but also, again, it's a raw material. And so even the basics like bread start going up in price. We've also got layered on top of that in the UK, we've been affected by the full hit, if you like, of Brexit and now importation, exportation, and all the duties and everything else. So there's a whole almost list of ingredients that have come together that any one of them we could have coped with. So we could have coped with probably prices going up because of importation duties. And we could have coped with maybe some prices going up because of the war if we didn't already have Brexit on the back end of that. But now we sort of make it a sandwich out of everything. And we've got Brexit, we've got the war, we've got post-COVID. And so inflation is going up out of control. In our country, the Bank of England has to step in and stop that. And without giving you an economics lesson, it's because if the prices go too high, then the movement between countries can't take place and loads of other stuff goes wrong. So bring it down. Now, what we've been seeing in 2022 is interest rates climbing gradually. And that would be perfectly normal. But they've then started to exponentially rise. And that exponential rise is a result of nerves in the city, in general banking, but it's also nervousness about the predictions of what's going to come. And while on the one hand, people will be predicting future inflation rates and future production, because production in the country is important, what we can produce, what we can sell, how we can transact, and imports and exports is all really important. While they're predicting all of that going forward, their forecasts have been getting gradually more and more pessimistic for all the reasons I mentioned before. So then interest rates start to climb more steeply. So here we are at the end of September, and we saw the Bank of England announce another increase in the base rate at the Bank of England. What's that got to do with you? So first off, any form of new borrowing that you want to take place on a personal level is going to cost you more money. So that could be from a personal loan, it could be borrowing on a credit card, and obviously on mortgages. And I'm going to come back to mortgages in a minute. They're a story in their own right. But what it also means is that on a business level, there will be companies out there that had planned expansions. And even if they didn't have planned expansions in the business plans, they need to expand in order to meet demand because they've got opportunities in the market. Business lending is going to be more expensive. And if business lending is more expensive, so it costs me more to buy the new machine to make the bread in my factory, on top of the fact that the grain is already more expensive, then we're going to find ourselves in a position where I have to pass those costs on. And so then you start to see that the prices rise again. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the idea is that by making lending more expensive, you get people to think twice about the borrowing they're taking out, whether it's personal borrowing or whether it's business borrowing. So on a personal level, you might think twice about buying your new car now, or you might think twice about buying a new house, or you might think twice about moving to bigger premises if you're a business. So we start to slow everything down. I'm not even going to get into the very complicated politics that have gone on with the Bank of England taking one strategy in order to slow things down and then having the budget that is designed to speed things up, and the disastrous effect that we've already seen in the market. So, number one, fact, money is going to become more expensive to borrow. Therefore, people with cash are in a stronger position. And whatever your circumstances, whether I'm talking to you as a business owner or I'm talking to you as a member of the public, what you really need to be doing now, if you haven't already through the other 32 podcast episodes I've been sending you, is very, very, very seriously look at all the borrowing that you've got. Look at what borrowing you've got, what it's costing you, and what the end date of that lending period or that lending rate period is. And this is going to segue over into an example into mortgages, because mortgages is a perfect example. A lot of people are homeowners. Wonderful. They buy their houses on a mortgage. Wonderful. Mortgages come, and there's this term used that's a term. So really there is the term of the mortgage, which is the length. So you typically take out a 25-year mortgage or maybe a 20-year mortgage. So it's based on how old the oldest person is on the mortgage and whether you're going to finish work and can afford paying back the mortgage. So that's one term of a mortgage. The other term of the mortgage is the term that is directly linked with the cost of the mortgage itself. And so what you might do, and then this sometimes is referred to as a deal, you might take a 2-year deal or a 5-year deal, or a 2-year mortgage or a 5-year mortgage. The mortgage is still potentially for 25 years long, but the amount of rate or the cost of the rate that you are borrowing is only set for 2 or 5 years. Over the last, I would say, goodness me, 5 to 10 years, the majority of mortgages that I've experienced, gone for either personally or through the business or for clients, the recommendation has been taking 5-year mortgages. Now, that's absolutely fine if you've taken a mortgage since 2020. You're fairly okay because your mortgage isn't going to come up for renewal until the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. That's 3 years away. Hopefully, things will have calmed down. If things haven't calmed down, there are going to be so many other problems that worrying about your mortgage rate is just going to be one on a big list. The predictions of the people that I've been speaking with and from my experience is that we've got a 2 to 3 year period of hiatus. It really depends on what the government does, because sensible that they would change what they've just done in the budget, but from a political saving face, no one is going to announce a budget one day and then 1 week later change that budget. So that's not going to happen. So we're going to have to roll through this and see what the consequences are, and that's going to take 2 to 3 years to play out. The problem is that if you took out a mortgage in, say, 2015 and you did nothing about it, because when your mortgage came up after 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, interest rates were so low that actually you were probably just thinking that I could stay on. Sometimes it's called a rollover rate. Sometimes it, if you know the language, it would be called the standard variable rate. So they take a standard variable rate, which is an amount that the bank sets, add it to base rate, and those two numbers together may well have been as much as or less than the mortgage you were already paying. I know we had a couple of mortgages that were with the old Mortgage Express for buy-to-let purposes, and the standard variable was something like 0.5 or 0.75%. When base rate went down to 1, we were laughing. We were on a better base rate than if we remortgaged, so we stayed where we were. But why I keep banging on at you to pay attention to your financial position, and this is really about financial control, is because I was very aware of the changes that were happening, and I will have, if we go back through the podcast, I can prove to you that I have been telling you to pay attention to your mortgages and your loans and everything else for months, or months and months and months. The point being is that if you did nothing about it, you're now going to be in a position where, because of all the drama in the news, you're suddenly aware of it, and now you're leaping, maybe with everybody else, to try and remortgage. And this could be your buy-to-let portfolio, or it could be your personal mortgage. So then we've seen some dramatic news in the newspaper, and they like to make it dramatic, don't they? Lenders closing down mortgage offers, lenders removing mortgage offers. Now, just to be clear, a lender didn't make you a mortgage offer and then withdraw that mortgage offer. What they did, and what lenders do, is they say, we've got all of this chocolate, and you can have orange flavor, you can have mint flavor, you can have plain, you can have it with nuts, you can have it with fruit. Now, we've got too many products out there. We can't cope with the number of people that want to buy our chocolate bars. Chocolate bars are mortgages in this example. And so what we're going to do is to manage our workflow is we are going to take away some of the chocolate bars so that we get less business coming in, and the business we've got coming in is much simpler and we can handle it easily. So we're going to keep a plain chocolate bar and maybe a fruit chocolate bar, and that's it. And we will withdraw these other products. So what lenders have actually been doing is withdrawing products, some in the residential market, some in the buy-to-let market. But the other thing that they do is they don't reduce the product, they increase the price. So you can still buy my fruit and nut chocolate bar, but it's going to cost you twice as much. Because if anybody wants that product, great, but I'm going to make a lot of money out of it if I've got to put staff on that to make sure that I can produce and deliver for my customers. So reading through the headlines, they've not taken away loans from anybody that was promised a loan. What they have done is they have streamlined the product offer that is on. But what they've also done, as with the Bank of England increasing its rate, they have increased their rates. And so what you will typically see, and I can talk to you about the buy-to-let market, is I would say last year I was probably getting somewhere in the region of sub 2% on a personal mortgage and sub 3% on a buy-to-let mortgage in a limited company. Early this year, you saw the interest rates go up to 2.5% and 3.5% respectively. At the moment, as of today, at the end of September, but there is a rise due, we are looking at about 4.5% for personal buy-to-let, and we are still looking at close to 6%, high fives for a limited company. And that is about to shift dramatically in the next couple of weeks. We're going to see personal buy-to-let mortgages at 5% and buy-to-let mortgages in limited companies at 7% or above. Now, that sounds horrible when last year we were looking at 1%, 2%, 3%. But, and that's why I entitled this podcast back to 2008, because that's where we were when I first started out. So while there's the part of me that is an experienced investor going, goodness me, look at interest rates, haven't they gone up compared with last year and the year before? The other part of me is seeing this as a cycle. Here we go again. And that's the next piece that I just want to cover off with you. We have got a period of economic instability, in part caused because of the war, but also on the backdrop of Brexit and COVID, which has affected everybody globally. Brexit very much for the UK and Europe, I suppose. And then we've got the war as the next factor coming in. We've got rising utility rates caused by the restriction of the raw materials, which is where Russia is being able to play its chess pieces in its war game by holding back supplies of gas and everything else, so that we are going to be affected and feel the pain, even though we're not directly involved in the war, because they want us to do certain things. I'm not going to get into all of that detail. They want us to do certain things, and so they're using this as a way to pressurize us. All of this is coming together. So while the UK is definitely going to be struggling a lot more in the next couple of months, and certainly I would suggest in the next 2 to 3 years, globally, we are all struggling with the impact of post-COVID and all of that borrowing that needs to be paid back, and all of the, if you like, the economic damage that followed through for us, but also the impact of the war. But at the end of this, what are you going to do? Are you going to panic, or are you going to take a breath? And what I really wanted to do with this podcast is just remind you, not remind you because you didn't know this, but share with you what my thoughts were back in 2008, and therefore how that is influencing how I am reacting now and how my clients are reacting. So back in 2008, we saw a massive period in the property market. Property prices were rising. Everything was going really well. In the middle of 2007, we started to hear about these banks in America falling over, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, I think it was that way around, or Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, something to that effect. And the government over there having to step in and save banks. And I don't know that we're going to have them saving banks over here, but something's definitely going to happen in this country, right? So we started to hear those rumbles in 2007. At that point, I acted quickly and I remortgaged the properties I had so that I was cash rich. I have told you about this months ago. If you acted, great. If you didn't act, you've got a narrowest of windows now, but I literally mean it's a matter of days. If you're listening to this podcast on Thursday in the beginning of October, you have to act straight away, and it's probably still too late even at that point. So if you haven't acted and it's too late for you to act now to shore up your investments, what you've got to do is look at how you can mitigate the risk of the interest rate rises that are coming down the line and the increased utility costs. And those are simple things that I've spoken about before. So understand where your liability is and how much you owe. Understand what forthcoming liabilities you have. Have you looked at opportunities? I mean, we've literally been having solar panels installed this week. Have you looked at solar panels? Have you looked at insulation for your property? And this applies whether it's your own home, whether it's your investment properties, or even if you are in a situation where you are renting a property, you could be speaking to your landlord about opportunities to improve the insulation in the property and mitigate against utility bills. Then what you need to be looking at is how you live your life. I don't want to harp on and on and on and on again about this, but have you got a spreadsheet? Do you know your monthly expenses? Are there certain luxuries that at the moment you could scale back? So instead of 3 takeaways a month, maybe have one. Instead of 1 takeaway a week, have one a month. Instead of buying coffee on the way to work, invest in a flask and take your coffee with you. I'm not saying that you have to tighten your belt. I'm not saying that you have to scrimp, because this is all about living a wealthy life. But part of living a wealthy life is being clear of what that means to you and being in control of your finances and of your resources. And that is something that basic economics will make you do on a regular basis. No matter how wealthy you start out, there are going to be periods in a 20-year span where the markets are performing well, you feel extra liquid in your cash, and then there are going to be times when the market changes and you're going to be feeling less liquid in your cash. And so you have to be adaptable. And I'm going to talk to you about being adaptable in one of the following podcasts. So interest rates have gone up. Interest rates are likely to go up. If you remortgaged, great. If you didn't remortgage, see if it's not too late. If it is too late, how can you mitigate these expenses? What can you look at in terms of your financial budget that you can adjust? This doesn't mean to say you have to live an impoverished life. It means that you are taking responsibility, taking control and deciding, and not being hit by bills that you suddenly can't afford. Then you have to take out lending at the new expensive rates, and that puts you in more pressure down the line. Plan for this, and be aware of the fact that this is a global problem, but we've got a magnifying glass on us right now. We are hot with a financial problem. It's going to last the next couple of years. Do you panic or do you take a breath? As I said, I saw things coming in 2007. I was prepared for 2008, and I actually carried on buying. 2008 saw the start of the global financial crisis. Can you even remember that as a term? The global financial crisis, that was the crisis that we had before Brexit, which was the crisis that we had before COVID, which was the crisis that we had before the Ukrainian war and the utility bills. So 4 or 5 crises ago, there was a global crisis, and it was, generally caused by the restriction of money. We're not seeing a restriction of money. We're seeing the cost of money being more expensive, which will knock some people out the market. But if you're smart, there is a real opportunity now to plan for and start to invest in property, because there will be HMO owners, which is houses of multiple occupation, which is where they rent by the room. And as a consequence of renting by the room, the landlord pays the utility bills. Do I need to finish the sentence there? You can see what's happening. If they have remortgaged, they are still going to be facing increased utility bills over the next year until they can change their tenancy agreement. So there's a 12-month period where they're going to feel the pain, particularly because a large majority of HMOs are to students. Those contracts would already have been agreed, possibly even before Easter this year. If they haven't remortgaged and they are now in a mortgage that is going to increase the mortgage costs as well as the utility costs, you are going to see those landlords wanting to sell their properties. If there are residential buyers out there that haven't remortgaged and that have been enjoying, for example, a mortgage where they were maybe earning only being charged 1 or 2%, and now all of a sudden, because they haven't remortgaged, interest rates go up, interest rates say 2 or 3% at the moment, and then they may have a standard variable, you remember that surcharge that's there, they could come out of a mortgage that was costing them a 1 or 2% and walk straight into a 6% standard variable mortgage on top of increased domestic utility rates. Homeowners are going to be in a position where sooner or later they're going to have to sell and either downsize, or if they get themselves in difficulty, sell in a distressed way and fall back into the rental market. So what this means, never to gloat, but what this does mean is that there is going to be future demand in the property market for rental properties because people won't be able to cope. And this is just a sheer fact of, I don't know, is it just us as a country or is it globally? We just don't understand the money maths that I keep talking about. So landlords of multiple occupancy properties are going to be hit. Landlords of buy-to-let properties are going to be hit if they haven't remortgaged. Yes, they won't be facing the utility bills, but they are still going to be hit. Residential buyers, whether they have or haven't remortgaged, are still going to be facing increased utility bills. So all the way round, there is going to be a shift in the housing market. We've then also seen the government make certain changes where they are altering stamp duty, which is the initial tax when you buy a property. So they're increasing that so that it only comes into effect at 250,000, which is trying to, sorry about that, I'll say that bit again. They have increased stamp duty to 250,000. So that is the point at which you have to pay tax. So this means that they are trying to stimulate the markets outside of London and the home counties, outside of the big cities, the smaller properties that cost sub 250. So there is going to be demand out there. Caveat, if you're a buy-to-let investor and it will be a second property, you'll still have to pay the 3% surcharge. But now you'll be able to buy as much as a £250,000 house at 3%, whereas it was costing you 5% before. So there is an opportunity to invest. I have clients at the moment investing. I have clients that are planning to invest. Now, they fall into two categories. Clients that, whatever the interest rate, they know the way it's going, they're quite prepared. If the spreadsheet says that it's worth investing their money, they are still going to invest, even if interest rates are at 5%. They'll probably invest in personal names rather than in limited company. And as long as they are not super high tax rate, or maybe what will happen, and this is not to be sexist, but typically the husband might be the higher rate earner and the wife being the 20% earner, put properties in the wife's name, and that's then only covered by 20%. And so keeping it in a personal name is not as damaging as it would be for somebody who's a 50% taxpayer, or they're buying with cash. Buy with cash now, hold, and then leverage that money when the markets change in, let's see, 3 years. I'm going to make a note in my diary to check in October 2025 to see whether I'm right and interest rates are coming down. I hope it'll be sooner than that, but who knows? So to summarize, don't panic, take a breath. This is just the start of 2008 all over again. There was a period there, 2008 to 2012, where things were uncomfortable. They went very bleak, and then they gradually started to come up. Then there was a great boom at the other end. But don't wait 4, 5, 6 years for a boom to occur when there are going to be opportunities coming forward. Opportunities for you to sort out your personal finances, to sort out your personal debt, and then to look at the resources you've got. And if it's right for you to make investments now when you can be buying at a preferential rate, because when a boom comes, of course, house prices will go up. So the interest rates will maybe come down and the house prices will go up, because it's always going to be like that. What if you could buy at a lower price now? Yes, for a couple of years, you're going to pay a higher rate of interest, but then you'll be able to remortgage out. You'll have bought at the low rate, and then you'll be able to remortgage onto a low rate. That's a smarter move. I'm going to leave you with those thoughts. I hope that I've given you some insights, whether you're a business owner or as an individual, about what you can be doing to protect yourself from the panic and the change that's coming, but also see this as an opportunity, because inside every cloud, there is always an opportunity. My name is Vicki Wishay. This is the A Wealthy Life podcast. I hope that I've been able to share some whoosh into your life, some inspiration, and hopefully some calm on some troubled waters. I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Take care.